But when we last left Nehemiah, maybe you can remember that he had received visitors. He was in the citadel at Susa, serving King Artaxerxes, the Persian king, and his brother Hananiah came to visit, along with some other men. And in their visit, Nehemiah could hardly wait, it seems, to ask a couple of questions. How are the people who have gone back? How are these Jews who have left the Persian area and they've gone back to the province of Judah and to the city of Jerusalem? And also, how is the city of Jerusalem? And Nehemiah receives the answer, an answer he doesn't like. Concerning the people, they're in great trouble. They're miserable. They're in disgrace. It's not gone well for them. And concerning the city, the temple has been rebuilt by Ezra, but the city's still in a mess. In fact, the city's just exactly like it was when Nebuchadnezzar left it concerning the wall 90 years earlier or so. Nebuchadnezzar had broken down the walls and burned the gates with fire, and they delivered that news to Nehemiah. That's the way it is. And Nehemiah hears that bad news. You remember, he's so brokenhearted, and it says, for some days I wept, and I mourned, and I fasted, and I prayed to the God of heaven. And we reviewed that prayer last week. And we heard Nehemiah speaking to God saying, I know this is all our fault. I know the Israelites have sinned and sinned horribly, and I'm one of them. I'm a sinner, and I've done horribly, and my family's a part of this mess. But you made a promise that if we would return to you, we would obey you, no matter how far we were scattered, you would bring us back. Will you bring us back? And at the very end of the prayer, he said something we did not understand. We'll figure it out today. Look at the phrase he puts right at the end of the prayer. Give your servant, give me success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. I was a cupbearer to the king. Now we don't know what it's talking about, do we? But I'm asking you, God, would you cause this man, this king, to have favor toward me today, this day? Grant me today. Mark down the word today. Because isn't that the way it is? When we get bad news and we get a problem and we don't know how to handle a problem and we turn to God, we want our problem solved today. And yet, it's interesting to read the first phrase of chapter 2 of the book of Nehemiah, where we begin to find what he's talking about. Because in chapter 2, the first phrase, verse 1, will say this. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes. Now, why would he talk about the month? And yet you back up and you look at chapter 1 in verse 1. He says, I'm the son of Hakaliah. And it was in the month of Kislev in the 20th year of the king. So it's the same year, but it's the space between chapter 1 and chapter 2, the space between Kislev and Nisan, those 2 months. And Kislev, it corresponds with our late November and December. And Nisan corresponds with our late March and April. So depending when you start counting and when you end your count, 4 to 5 months have passed. 4 to 5 months. And he has been begging God night and day, will today be the day? Will you make today be the day that this man, the king, Artaxerxes, the king of Persia, the most powerful person on the face of the earth, will grant favor to me? Now, it's not the main point of the lesson. But it's so easy for us to pray and ask God, and we do it for 2 weeks, and we do it for 3 weeks, and will you take care of this problem? And it doesn't happen. And we begin to what? We begin to kind of think it's not going to happen maybe. And so instead of praying every time we think about it, we don't pray but every other day, or we don't pray but once a week. Or this man is begging God for about 5 months. Will you grant me favor today? Will you make today be the day? And from there we begin to look at the story. At least this portion of the story. And we're going to read these scriptures together, and we'll pause and we'll talk about these scriptures, but I don't know any other way to do this story unless I just tell you the story, and I think I could tell you the story by now. But read with me what happens next. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when the wine was brought to him, this was part of his job. When the wine was brought to him, I took the wine and I gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before. Now, we're talking 4 to 5 months. We're talking about a man whose heart is broken. We're talking about a man who cries about it a lot. At least cries till the tears are all gone. Now, don't we all understand that we can have stuff going on inside, and we can put on a face that looks bright and cheery so that no one else knows? Don't we do that all the time? You can do that at your home sometimes. You can try to appear like all is well and hope nobody notices. And you can go to work and you can appear like everything is fine, and you can try to carry on and hope nobody notices what's going on in your broken heart. And we do that at these assemblies, don't we? We can come in and I try to smile and you try to smile and we try to, how are you doing? And I'm fine. But once in a while, I drop my guard. For 4 or 5 months, he has been going before the king. The king expects him to be his cheerful comrade. The king expects so much of him, and you go in every day and you're doing your best, but once in a while, your face betrays your heart. Everybody understand that? Once in a while, your face gets the best of you. And so I can take one look at Suze often and know something's not right. One look. She can do the same with me. Often with our children. One look or one tone of the voice. You know how it is. When the sad heart begins to appear on the face, there are these wrinkles, and there's this countenance that kind of drops, and the smile is not there. I had not been sad before, but now watch this. So the king asked me, why did your face look so sad? It finally happens, 4 or 5 months, and now he comes before the king. He's bringing the wine, and the king says, why did your face look so sad when you are not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart. Now, when you're just sick, your face is going to show it, isn't it? And when you're brokenhearted, is not your face going to show it? And the king says, there's something wrong with you, Nehemiah. You and I have been together for a long time. We're really good friends. You've been my constant companion. I can tell something is wrong with you. And I know you're not physically sick, so it's got to be a heart condition. Something's going on in your life, and I want to know what it is. And I was very much afraid. Interesting statement. I was very much afraid. Because he's appearing before the man who is the most powerful person on the face of the earth. And he could say to a face that wasn't happy, rid him of me. And the guards would have taken him and put him to death. Or the guards would have taken him and put him in jail, prison, dungeon. And no one would ask a question. So I was afraid. Though I've been with the fellow for a long time, I was afraid. But I went ahead and told the king my problem. May the king live forever. Now that's a good way to start anything, okay? When you got a request, when I've got a request that I want to try to talk Susan into, I say, Susan, you sure look nice today. Susan, can you believe how wonderful you know how wonderful you are, Susan? Can I go buy this? That's kind of how it works. May the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? Now, Artaxerxes would have known all about Judah. He would have known all about Jerusalem. He would have known all about Cyrus letting the people go back. He would have known all about Ezra rebuilding the temple. He knows all about all this. So I just told him. Nehemiah said, I just told him what was going on inside of me. And the king said to me, what is it that you want? That was what he was praying about in chapter 1. 5 months earlier, he had been praying, will you have the king to grant favor to me? And all these months later, the king answers in a favorable way. Nehemiah, how can I help you? Isn't that what you do also? When you see someone with a face that shows that they're brokenhearted and they're struggling with something, don't you often look at them and say, what can I do? How can I help? Is there anything I can do? I don't know how far to go with illustrations, but Pat loses a dog, but Steve lost a wife. Keisha and Chef lost a mother. I try to call him every day. He often tells me, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. What can I do? How can I help? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? And this king, this mighty king who can do anything, what is it that you want? And he says this. Then I prayed to the God of heaven. Now, he's been praying for 5 months. But this is not the same kind of prayer. You know, some of you have major prayer lives. All of you pray. I know that. Some of you dedicate an hour a day or something like that, and you're on your knees praying. And some of you pray a little bit here and a little bit there. But this is a different kind of prayer. This is that prayer that Sue says, I lost this thing and I couldn't find it. I had to have it right now. And I asked God to help me, and sure enough, I found it. I had it happen to me this week, this last Monday. There was a decision that's been made for several years now, and was made recently, a few months ago, negative toward our university. It was just negative. We needed this thing to happen. It was negative. And so they said it could never happen again. So I had this little wild idea. I had these strange ideas, and I floated this idea, and this idea got floated to the president who's over this council of presidents, and if my idea worked, it would shake up everything. And I told people, I said, what have I got to lose? Either they say yes or they say no, or maybe in the between it changes things. In the middle of a meeting, I was passed a note. This president wants you to call him. I leave the meeting. I go punch in the numbers on my phone. I'm about to hit that red button, but before I hit the red button, I say, what do I need to know? And what do I need to say right here? And I push the red button. Amazing results. Amazing results. It looked like it could never happen. And he said, you've been invited to Fort Smith, October 31st. You get to present your case in front of all these people. Wow. But you do just that. I prayed to God before I gave him the answer. Little tiny prayers that show that you trust God, that show you believe he's there. God, what do I need to know? What do I need to say? Help me with this. I prayed to the God of heaven and I answered the king. If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, then let him send me to the city of Judah where my ancestors are buried so I can rebuild it. Now do you see what's happened? From the very first moment Hananiah gave him that word, it's a mess over there. He began to think, they've been messing with a broken wall for 90-something years, and I know how to lead because I've been with the king, and I know this, and I know that. I think I could do the job. But that door for him to do the job could not be opened unless God opened the door. So I began to weep and mourn over the people, and I began to beg God, make this king be favorable to me. Because I want to go back and rebuild this wall. I want to take care of my people. Now, you're going to find he's asking in some ways for a miserable task. He's asking for some ways a miserable task because what he's got right now, you want the life of luxury? You want the life of luxury? Just stay where you are, Mr. Nehemiah, because you get to eat the best food that Persia has to offer. You get to drink the best wine that Persia has to offer. And it's pretty good wine. And you get to wear royal clothes like nobody else gets to wear. But he's willing to walk away from that. King, if I've pleased you, if we're good friends, if you care, would you let me go back? And watch how the king answers. The king, with his queen sitting beside him, asked me, how long will your journey take? And when will you get back? It pleased the king to send me, so I set a time. Now, here we're getting close to the point of this brief lesson. Go ahead and read the next part. I also said to him, if it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governors of Change Euphrates, so they will provide me safe conduct while I arrive and until I arrive in Judah. And, look at the next. May I have a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the royal park, the royal forest. So he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel, the stronghold, by the temple that Ezra has already built. And for the city wall. And to build a residence I'll need to occupy. Do you think this fellow has it planned out? Do you think he's been waiting every day, day after day, give me success today, waiting for that opportunity, and as soon as the opportunity comes, he says, will you let me go? Will you give me letters for safe passage? And will you give me a letter to Asaph, the keeper of your forest, so I can get some timber to build this and this and this? And by the way, here's how long it'll take me. Do you think he's done his planning? And so not only did he do all that, the gracious hand of God was upon me, and the king granted my request. And he goes ahead to say he even sent an armed escort with me. He even sent an armed escort with me. Now, do any of you see the one point I want to make? Can you guess the one point I want to make? It's very applicable to our lives, and yet it's really hard to make that point. Let me show you the points. Believers pray and believers believe. Believers pray and believers believe that God is listening and will answer. Now, he prayed, grant me success today, right now. And he kept praying that for 5 months, right now. And he did not quit praying. And finally, when the king said, all right, go. Let me help you. What are you going to need? He was able to say, 1, 2, 3, 4, I got to have this. So all the while he was praying, he was believing that this was going to happen and that he would go back, and he was planning, he was acting just exactly like it was going to take place. Does that make sense to you? A couple of years ago, they had a family gathering over at Ronnie and Greg's house, and it was probably Memorial Day or 4th of July, something like that. They always do that with the Cox and Gregory clan. It's not all that enjoyable, but I go. And their cousin from Oklahoma City was there. Her husband was asked to lead the prayer. I still remember the prayer. I don't remember exactly for which he asked. But he led this prayer, and in the end of the prayer he said, and I thank you for doing this. I thank you for doing this, and I thank you for doing this. And I let him be quiet, and I thought, he not only prayed, at the same time he thanked God for doing what he'd asked God to do. It was a prayer of belief. And I must confess to you that sometimes I pray and I don't even think God is going to answer it. Do you ever do that? I end up praying out of habit, my friends. I end up praying rote prayers. And sometimes they're about serious situations, and I even think it's probably not going to work out this way anyway. And I want to tell you what God says about that. Look at this passage in James, and you know that I don't like the scripture hop. I never have liked it. I never will like it. But look at the passage in James, taken a little bit out of context, but not violated too much. Chapter 1. When you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. The person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all that they do. Wow. I don't like what he just called me. I'm insulted by what he just called me. Do you see what he just called me? He said, Kim, when you pray like you just described to these people that you pray sometimes, that you pray and you don't even really think it's going to happen, he said, you are double-minded and unstable in all your ways, and don't get the idea you're going to receive anything. And it stops me in my tracks. And I back up and I say, if you're a believer, you pray. Now, if you never pray, you got a problem with believing. Okay? You got a problem with just being a part of God. But if you believe, you pray, and if you pray, you believe. You believe that God's going to do something. And you act like God's going to do something. And your countenance shows that you're acting like God's going to do something. And you're confident that God's going to do something. And always the question is asked, well, what if he doesn't do it this way? Well, does that change my position of my belief? Does that change the next time this comes up? I won't pray the same way? Are you getting my point? Believers pray. And believers believe that God's listening and God's going to do something. It should change all of our lives. It should change this church. It should change the world if we do what Nehemiah's just done. And so that's it. We get to do that today with more credibility. Let me say it like that, with more credibility than he did. He prayed to God, but I get to pray to God using the name of Jesus, the most precious name ever given on the face of the earth. I get to pray with the knowledge that God is living inside of me through his Spirit. And whether you agree or not with what I do, there is never a time that I get up and speak now, never a time, that I don't say, Father, help me say what these people need to hear. And Jesus, would you talk to the Father about this? And I say, Spirit, would you give me the words to say? And I did it this morning. I don't know if it's the Spirit having me talk about my big nose or not, but it came out, okay? And you will not ever forget my big nose. And every time you see Steve Martin, you'll see Ken Jones. Now, everybody sees Steve Martin won't think about me, okay? But you get the point. We have a stronger position with God than did Nehemiah. Because Jesus came and Jesus died and he said, I'm going to make you like me, a brother to me. You can talk to the Father. You can ask me. He said it both ways. You can talk to the Father and use my name. That's what he said to the apostles. Or he said, you can just talk to me, to the apostles. I'm going to take care of you. So let us be thankful as we take these emblems that Jesus gave us a stronger position than Nehemiah possessed in this powerful, beautiful story.